Well, good morning, everybody. We'll call our meeting to order. We have a quorum in attendance and it is just past our appointed hour. Our first order of business today will be the approval of the minutes for our last regularly scheduled meeting of August 8th, which you should have received as a part of your meeting notice.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Financial reports, I believe, David, you're going to report instead of Tom.
Tom could not be here today, so if you just flip over to your financial statements tab. The one on the first page is the balance sheet, and really no changes significant to the balance sheet. So you can flip over and see operations, which would be the next page, which is actually page 3 and 4. For the month of August, expenses were right in line with our budget. If you look over on that page 4, you can see net ordinary income. We're actually almost $107 ahead of the budget. So that just means we're right on target with our spending. And then if you look down a couple of lines, you'll see under other income, $17,500, that is a bond fee that we received on the Norcom project. And then flip on over to pages 5 and 6. We only have 2 months of the new year, July and August. On page 6, under that same line, net ordinary income, we're about $708 ahead of budget. All that means is expenses and revenues are right in line with the budget. Nothing out of the ordinary. Happy to entertain any questions.
Simple report this month. Any questions or comments for David? Entertain a motion, we accept the report.
Make a motion to approve the financial report.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving into committee reports. Any activity out of the investment committee, David?
We have one coming up this month, actually in 2 weeks.
Long range planning, David.
No report.
Oak Cliff Industrial Parks.
No report.
And Chipper's not
Not
with
here
us today, so let's move past the transportation committee and move into David's report.
A few FYI items. Under our University Food Technology Center, just a brief update. You all know we've been approved for the EDA, the federal grant, $1.9 million for the center. Talked to the director of EDA this week, and he said it's going through legal review. We all know how long legal reviews take. And so it'll be he said probably the end of this month. He said no later than September 30th, we'll probably hear about the funding part of the grant. So that's good news, that's coming along. And actually, and I may let Chuck comment more on this than myself, Chuck and I toured, invited out to Caterpillar. As you know, in 2011, we had the large announcement for Caterpillar, and he invited us out to actually see where some of that money has been spent. And it was really, really an interesting tour. Their facility is huge, and we walked back into the plant area. We didn't walk 30 feet, and he said, this is as far as we need to go. I can show you everything from right here. And it was totally amazing, the technology they have. And he kept saying, because of what the authority and the state did, the goal for Caterpillar now is 0 faults in our work. That's almost unheard of. And he gave us some examples. They're now using robotics, and they have this system where every engine, every generator has its own DNA. Excuse me. Meaning, in the past, and the past was only 2 years ago, in the past, if they had an engine or generator, something happened to it, they would go in, of course, whoever bought the generator would call, and would come back to Caterpillar, and then Caterpillar would have to look and see, okay, this is a model 900, and this 900 we'll look and see, and it was made during the month of September. We don't know exactly when it was made. We can identify. He said it would cost them a lot of money and a lot of time trying to identify where the thing was made and actually come up with what was wrong with it, what caused the problem. He says, now, since we've started this program, we have had 0 returns, 0 issues, and every single part in that generator, every single part has a barcode. Every screw, every washer, everything. And that barcode on every part can tell you not only when it was made, who the operator was that put that part in the equipment. And he says, and within, minutes, we can tell you exactly what's wrong with the part. And he says, and it's saving us a lot of money. And he said, and another example of what people don't understand, he said, you take the car manufacturers, Ford, GM, any of them, they put their cars or trucks on an assembly line, and pretty much they're all made the same. They go down an assembly line. He said, we have an assembly line here. He said, you can have up to 1 million different configurations on that one line. And he says, and it was just almost blowing us away, the technology. I don't know, Chuck, if you want to.
Yeah, we think about all they're doing out there, the gen sets, but in reality, the engines that they build go across the whole Caterpillar product line. They do engines that are marinized for use in boats. They do engines that are for use in industrial equipment in addition to the gen sets. And I don't know if any of you all have ever had the experience of rebuilding a gasoline engine, but for example, the piston rings, the installation of the piston rings. If you go in a typical automotive shop, you're going to see some guy sitting there with a set of rings and a piston and a ring compressor, and it's all a very manual process, a lot of handwork in putting those rings on that piston. Now, the guy goes, he pulls from the bin the piston that has the barcode for whatever the engine spec is, the ring set. He essentially lays them on a tray that is fed into the machine, and then the robot takes over and does all of the installation of those intricate components. And on that 0 fault thing, since they brought this line up and started utilizing these robotics, the math was that roughly they had done 9,800 piston ring installations through that line.
98,000.
Was it 98,000? Big number. And not a single failure from a piston ring failure in an engine at this point. And then the other thing that I think speaks well for our labor pool and the quality of one of the reasons Caterpillar is so pleased to be in Griffin is he told us the story of the Renew paint facility out there on Green Valley that paints these engines. He said since that facility opened up and they started using that process for painting those engines, they've not had a single return of an engine due to paint fault. So Caterpillar is very pleased with the quality that they're turning out in this Griffin plant. It's becoming really a model for their other plants to look at.
Yeah, we assisted Lester Renew when he did his plant operation that we went out in Green Valley. And one other thing he kept telling us about, that they know exactly through the computer and through the robots exactly how much torque or how many times or how far you turn a bolt or a screw. And we asked the simple question like, well, if I'm putting a screw in anything at home, whatever it happens to be, you have to kind of put it in and get it where it catches the little threads on the inside. And he said, well, we have operators that actually just place the screw in there, but the computer can tell what position it is before it catches. And he said, we know exactly the angle and the torque of every single screw. It was totally amazing. And they still, and the good news is they still have a lot more money in that to spend, which will go into, for property taxes. And they have already surpassed their job obligation that they promised. So they've still got more money to spend, and they've already increased the job number. So it was really an exciting visit to just see what's going on.
David, on the flip side of that, you might have noticed the portable generator we've got over at City Hall. The generator we bought from them about 6 years ago had some of those issues that you're talking about with the piston. And it's really been a problem trying to get that corrected from that old generator, and that's why we've had that portable one out there. I hope to get it, the problem solved and get it moved by next week, but that's exactly, the generator that we bought was one in a very small group. The reason we got it cheap, by the way, it was one in a very small group that I think they were using as an experiment, and we got it real cheap, but it has run into some of those problems that have since been corrected in this process.
And not only are they shooting for 0 faults, they're shooting for 0 injuries in their plant. And he says the only injuries that we have now is if sometimes we'll get an employee that might bump into a machine and scratch their hand or something. He said right now it's being confined to just Band-Aids. He said so that also has been a huge turnaround. So that was exciting news. We have a couple of new projects that have come on the books since the last month. We've had one that has resurfaced after about a year. We were eliminated, and then all of a sudden they have been rethinking their strategy, so they came back for another visit after a year. So we have had that one. One of our new projects we announced last month also visited this month, and we're waiting to hear back from them. The large project that we talked about last month for the NACOM facility that we were eliminated due to the fact they outgrew the facility, we were in contact with them last week, actually, and we told them we had not read about an announcement anywhere and didn't know if the thing was still kind of hanging. Anyway, we have been moved into the backup site position. Backup site still means backup site, and they're doing due diligence, but that is at least is good news, and we can probably tell you who it is next month. But this is one of the top executives in the company, and he actually told me, he said, we think so much about the community. He says, I'm telling you, you can use me as one of your labor resources. If you have any prospects in the future, he said, you can just have them call me, and I'll be happy to talk to them about what we found in the community. So I thought that was a huge, huge deal. One of our chemical projects that we've had ongoing for the lakes for a while is now coming back in October for a couple of days, and we'll be meeting to go over some detailed information about their site plan, their building plan. We take that as also a good sign.
I don't know if you can recall, but what would this be number of visits for them? Yeah, about 4 or so.
Visits
Number of visits physically in Griffin.
is easy for visits, and it's an international company, so they have been over here and they have to fly from their country every time. So it's been a number of visits. Pat Topping, my counterpart in Macon, and I were invited to meet with Dr. Christopher out at UGA in Griffin, along with the Director of Development, to discuss ways of marketing the teaching program from basically Atlanta down to Macon, and trying to sort of capitalize on some things like that. So we are working with the teaching portion in addition to the food technology aspect. A number of years ago, we were a member of a joint marketing group. It's a group called Metro South, containing 6 counties on the south side. It was really a great organization. We're in the process of reforming that group into development authorities on the south side. So we'll again have some joint marketing, and it really leverages a lot of funds, so to speak, for trade shows and other marketing avenues that we'd like to take to market the communities. And those 6 counties, by the way, are Henry County, Clayton, Fayette, Coweta, South Fulton, and Spalding. And just a couple more things. We also have one additional new project for the NACOM facility. This particular prospect had been looking in northwest Georgia for about a year, and had been about to make a decision, and then at the last minute they decided maybe we should look at the south side of Atlanta for some possible locations. So actually, they literally called me one day and said, we'd like to be there in about an hour. Can you accommodate us? Of course we did. And then the CEO, it's an international company, he flew in about a week later, and we met them out at the facility, and now we're a finalist, and we're in the incentive negotiation part of the deal. This one's worth about $100 million and 500 jobs, so it's a nice size project.
Oh, that one was an added bonus too. David and I both lost about 5 pounds because it was 110 degrees and the air conditioning had not been on in the NACOM building in forever. It was like a sweat box the whole time we sat there.
And if you've ever walked down that outside corridor from the front to the back several times, it would give you a nice little workout.
Couple of miles.
We just had the wrong shoes on for the day. We also need to consider, the last thing on the agenda, we need to consider issuing bonds, our bonds, taxable bonds for a medical office project which is being proposed at the hospital. This would be no liability, of course. We would be in the middle of pass-through. The project is approximately $10 million. It's about 50,000 square feet. And they have an interest in our bond financing aspect. Haven't decided for sure, but something the board needs to consider. We would need to vote to issue, put it in a resolution that we issue our bonds and send them a letter saying the same thing.
Like that, at this point. Mr. Chairman, I put it in form of motion that we issue. The $10 million bond project, project.
So we have a motion authorizing the consideration of bonds for this would be a private developer in conjunction with the hospital, up to $10 million. We have a motion. We have the motion on that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And again, reiterate what David said, this would be no obligation to the authority nor the community.
And it's something that it looks like to us is vitally needed around the hospital, trying to get doctors and everyone in closer proximity. You leave a doctor's office, you go down the elevator, you're in the hospital if you need that kind of thing, and that's what you see in a lot of the major hospitals around Atlanta, even Fayetteville, all those. They have attached doctors and medical office buildings. And that concludes my report.
The only thing I've mentioned in the way of old business is Kim had shared with me that our listing of committees that we carried over from the 2012 fiscal year to 13. We still have a couple of spots where we've got some folks that we've not plugged in, so I'm going to get with David and Kim and we'll suggest some folks that seem logical to plug in these spots. There's only 2 or 3, and we'll get those out to you. If you get an email saying that you've been appointed to a particular spot and you're just vehemently opposed, let us know. I'm sure we can come up with a substitute, but I promise you it won't be too taxing. Any new business to come before us? Let's hear our reports from our gang along the wall. Who wants to go first?
Ladies.
Ladies?
Ladies?
Oh, I'll bite the bullet.
There you go.
I don't have a whole lot. Our board meets today at 3:30, of course, in the Welcome Center. And our expo that we had last month had 80-plus vendors. The Kiwanis building was filled, and I think it was very successful, so we were pleased with it. Air conditioning was a little problem, it was a little warm, but other than that, there was a lot of good networking, and I think we had a good response from the community, so thank you to everybody for that. Would like to invite you to come to the Taste and Music Festival on Saturday downtown, 4 to 10. There'll be a lot of good food, good entertainment, and we are working with Main Street and the Downtown Business Association to do that project. And you don't want to miss the United Way boat race Saturday morning at 9 a.m. out at Dundee. So we are getting ready to wind down our year, and so our nominating committee has been busy preparing a slate of officers. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Not a lot to report from the department lately. We are just busy as ever. We are making some changes, some internal changes within the department. Of course, most of you all know for the past few years, we have really been focused on unemployment insurance, and people coming in the door, that seems to be what they want to do primarily, is to file unemployment claims. So we are really taking a step and trying to turn things back around and work more on the employment service side so that we can get these people back to work. And we are making, we're getting there. It's just taking a little time. Having to retrain everyone, even the job seekers, we're having to retrain them as well. So, and of course, unemployment rate was up July this year from up to 11.4 in June. No, I take that back. 11.4 in June to 12.7 in July, and a lot of that has to do with a lot of you companies some of the companies in the area will lay off during a week in July for vacations or for shutdown, to maintain equipment or whatever. So that will always affect your unemployment rate in the month of July, for the month of July. So that's one thing that's not uncommon. That's about all we have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenny? Steve?
It's good that David mentioned the medical building. Sometimes I think we take for granted the importance of our medical industry over around the hospital and 8th Street. We're also working with the group that owns the property over there on 9th and Collins. You may have seen the signs up, and we have the owner of that property. We're working with them on a development agreement so that they can sell those lots and again bring in developers for medical buildings in that area. So a lot of activity going on around the hospital and those doctors' offices, and that's an important part of our tax base over there. Speaking of money, we just picked up a check for $500,000 for our sixth CDBG award that we've got, and we'll use that money to continue our infrastructure improvements on the north side of town. As we go up Hill Street to the east, we're improving water and sewer lines up there. So we're really proud to have that money. We just spent $4.6 million in the Steel Branch Reservoir. We haven't spent it yet, but we contracted to spend that to upgrade our Steel Branch Reservoir, which is now an 8 million gallon per day plant up to a 12 million gallon per day plant. So we can have plenty of water for all of our prospects. And we're also proud that we just received our 9th award for excellence in financial reporting, both our comprehensive annual financial plan and our popular annual financial plan, the 9th one in a row. So we're proud of that. And Bonnie mentioned the boat race and Saturday afternoon downtown. It'll be a busy time, and hope all of you can participate.
William?
Good morning, everybody.
Good.
All right, the next county commission meeting will be Monday night. It will be at 7 p.m. instead of 6 o'clock. One of my commissioners has some meetings in Atlanta all day, and she can't be there until a little bit later, so we're pushing it to 7 p.m. so we can make sure that we have a quorum there. County Commissioners had our follow-up retreat. We also talked about the SPLOST. It looks like we're going for a May 2014 SPLOST referendum. So if the Development Authority has any requests, we ask that you get those to us as soon as possible. And the Tax Commissioner is working on completing the Tax Digest. All of the appeals are in, and the Tax Commissioner is working on the Tax Digest, and we hope to set the levy by the end of the month. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention, one of my commissioners came by late yesterday and asked me to ask about the prospects of the sign at the lakes at Greenbelt. So I told him I would ask this morning.
About where that is.
An
in
entrance
development.
sign, yeah, so people know what.
Yeah, David, that's an ongoing project, David can speak to that.
We're working on that along with not just signs, but irrigation, landscaping, lighting. And it's the whole package, and we're trying to develop through Paragon actually a bid package now.
We've got a few conceptual designs for signage, because believe it or not, one of our prospects, that was a question that was on their final list, was they wanted to see what the signage was going to look like. We thought it was interesting that was so of interest to them, but it was. So we did have some conceptual designs created for that.
I'll pass that on, thank you.
Anything else to come before us? I'll entertain a motion, we adjourn. Motion, how about a second on that? All in favor, say aye. All right.